Good evening, YouTube. This is a quick video to show off some more new functionality in Ancient Armies. I haven't been coding for most of the year because I've had problems with my PC, and for whatever reason, it's very difficult to get hold of computer parts at the moment. There's just been a big chip shortage, but that's all sorted out now. So in the last video, I was talking about the fact that Ancient Armies shows too much information by default. And the intent here was to add effectively intel and regulate the kind of information that's fed back to the user. So that system's in after about a week of coding, and I'll show you that now. So I'll run up Ancient Armies. Kind of looks the same so far. I got two there. The first one's actually a map of Marathon. In fact, I'll show you that in the map editor, because just to show you that the mapping system is capable of quite large maps. It's just that normally for my testing purposes I tend to make smaller maps because it's just easier. Large maps take time. So I see a pretty large map. It's many kilometers big. The only problem is it's so big that the zoom's quite slow. I'd need to code it so that for big maps the zoom starts off a lot faster. But yeah, very big map, and it's for my testing basically. I want to prove that big battles on big maps are a viable thing in Ancient Armies, and to do that I spent some time putting this Marathon map together. So it shows that the maps that you see during my demonstrations, they're very basic. They're just there for trying out stuff. But the map editor, which is what you're looking at here, it's capable of some quite detailed maps. Anyway, onto the actual demo, because I digress. So go for the Intel demo. We're going to leave line of sight on and full command and control, because full command and control is the thing that's going to enable intel, or the lack thereof. So once again, you pick who you're riding with, or which unit you're going to be in. Now I'm going to go with Sir Crispin in Cavalry 1. You hear the sound from the Euterpe sound system. So this is the map. So there's a few differences you probably spot right away. The first is the enemy look very grey, and the reason why is because I'm embedded in this triangular unit here, Cavalry 1, and they're over a kilometre away, and because of that I can't really identify whose side they're on, which is why they've kind of gone see-through grey. Now I would say that in terms of the Intel technology, that the code is in, but it's still open to tweaking in terms of at what ranges information becomes available or not, as the case may be. So take the ranges with a pinch of salt, but right now anything over 1 kilometre, it's hard to identify what side it's from. So you could find yourself in a battle where you request from your leaders some help, and as the help arrives you can't identify them straight away until they get a bit nearer, so you're kind of panicking, thinking, oh my god, the enemy outflanked me, so forth. So yeah, there's been a few other changes on the actual units themselves. We now have little lines showing the direction that they're pointed in, and that's quite important because whilst it's obvious what direction they're pointed in when you can see all the information, if you have a look at, say, the enemy, it's not obvious which way it's pointing unless you look at these pointers, which is why they got added, basically. But it comes in handy because, like I say, Ancient Armies supports a wide range of formations. You can see a wedge, a rhomboid, but it also supports what I call a defensive square. That's where your men are pointing in all directions. In the old days it was very difficult to tell the difference, but now, because you've got these little pointers showing you which way the men are pointing, it gives you that immediate visual feedback as to where your men are looking. So what's happened on the intel front? Well, as I've always said, Ancient Armies has always displayed far too much information, information a player couldn't possibly know. So the way it works now, the unit that you're in, you get quite good information. You get obviously the name, the real name that is, weaponry and so forth. You don't get highly accurate figures in terms of men, and that's because when you're on a battlefield you don't know exactly how many men you have in your formation. You don't know how many went ill, you don't know how many are wounded. But for units that are in your formation, and my chap here is actually in charge of all the cavalry, you get pretty accurate figures, plus or minus 50 men or so. So that 500 figure that you see there is pretty accurate. However, for units outside of that formation, such as the infantry, because they're under a different leader, as you see by the flag there, the information's a little bit, I wouldn't say less truthful, but it doesn't have the same kind of accuracy. So here, we know the men are between 500 and 1,000, and so we really don't know exactly how many men are there. We're just kind of estimating based on looking at it. Now, if I'd played somebody that was the CNC, because he's in charge of everyone, you'd get accurate figures for everyone. And the other thing that's happened here as well is, in terms of naming, my cavalry commander doesn't really know the name of the infantry unit, so it's just defaulted to its nationality, which in this case is brown, so it's called brown infantry. And what you find is, as you move further away from me, and I'm in cavalry 1, you can see less and less information becomes visible, like you start to lose the name, which needs to be pretty close to to identify a unit. And as you get further away, you start to lose some of the, I guess, physical attributes. So this one here, I can't really see what it's armed with. I can't see its exact formation, and nor can I see what armour it has. But I've got a rough idea of how many people in it. And if you go all the way to the right, there's literally no information available at all. I know there's some cavalry there, and I know they're in a rhomboid formation. But outside of that, I have no idea what's in there. I'd have to ride up there to find out. Now, the enemy, as I said, they're kind of a grey see-through colour, because we don't even know if they are the enemy. From where we're standing, they're just a bunch of troops. They could be here to help us. We don't know yet until we send men up to take a look. And I'll show you that in a second. So what I want to do is show you, I guess, how we visualize cohesion and fatigue and so forth, and how that works with this intel system. So I'm going to grab this cavalry unit here and wheel it around. Now what I will say is, the way these commands are issued right now, that's going to go. The way you're seeing the commands issued now, you'll only be able to do to your own unit. Other units you need to send messengers to, and that's quite a different mechanism. So we're going to charge in, so we want them to be pretty knackered, so let's send them down there. And what I'll rotate my unit round just to get ready to catch up with him. And what we'll do, we'll send him on his way. We'll use time compression again, simply because we don't want it to take all day. Let's go for times 10. And let's watch him go. So both rotating around, and what you'll see is cavalry 2, as it charges down, it starts taking cohesion. That's those little holes that you see in the formation. It'll start to get knackered as it gets more see-through. Now, I'm in cavalry 1, and I'm still close enough to be able to see its state in terms of cohesion and fatigue, which is great. So it means if I was leading in this area of the battlefield, I could say, yeah, he's got problems, we need to do something about that. So let him carry on a bit further. And there, look at that, we've lost the information about that unit. We know it's there, but we have no idea what state it's in terms of cohesion or fatigue. Now, in the full game, you'll be able to ask for reports to find out. Or alternatively, you can just send yourself over there and have a look for yourself. So let's follow him up and see if we can get back some of the information as to what's going on with his fatigue and cohesion. There you go, we're now close enough to see that, okay, he's pretty knackered. And so am I by the looks of it. Now I'm going to cancel that. So not only does it affect, I guess, the visual writing that you see on the unit, but it also affects whether you can see cohesion or fatigue on other units, you have to be nearby to see that, or get a command report. Now, take a note of this unit here. That was our unit in defensive square, but now because we're over a kilometre away, we kind of don't know whose side he's on. Now, I thought very hard about this. I thought, do I latch it so that once a unit's identified to being as part of a side, it keeps that colour? And in the end I thought no. The way I thought about it is that the player should know. I know he's our side because I saw he was a prime unit just now, and it's up to the player to at least try to remember some of these details. Otherwise I suppose it would be like on the battlefield and you kind of forgetting how to send someone over to find out whose side that unit's on. So yeah, I won't see any detail on him until I ride closer. So I do. Also, if we look at our units here, there should be a lot less information on them. So I see a lot of these infantry units don't have any information on them at all. That one and these two got just size estimates. We've got no idea what they're armed with or anything like that other than what I actually remember. So I'll do, I'll play the next turn. I'll let my unit recover a bit, some of its cohesion. In fact, that one there just got knackered out and stopped and ground to a halt. So let me just recover some of my cohesion. Here we go. And of course the unit highlighter top right respects what information is available. So when I go over there, you can only see it's got roughly 500, you've got no other information. So you can't cheat by waving the cursor over a unit to try and get more information. So what I'll do, I'll send my cavalry up towards the enemy. Well, what we think is the enemy, we don't know yet because they're grey. So let's rotate him round. And we won't charge in because I want to try and retain some cohesion. Yeah, about there I think. Leave it on times 10, so here we go. So rotating around. So there's no new information just yet. Oh, notice that these are starting to go green. So as I've started to approach, my leaders identified that, whoa, they're enemy, they're the green troops. But still not a lot of information. We know that's cavalry, we know it's pointed towards us, we know that's infantry, but other than that we don't really know much, and we have to get a little bit nearer to get that information. And over here we've lost information on our cavalry unit down here because we're starting to move away from it. Oh, we've just identified that our unit here is actually on our side, which is probably a good thing. And again, more units are starting to come into focus, so we now know that they're the enemy. Now, if we zoom in a bit, you can see we're starting to get some numbers, and of course, because they're the enemy, these numbers aren't anywhere near as accurate as the numbers for our own troops, so we know there's between 100, 500 cavalry in there, but we don't really have any idea. Now, as for the infantry, we can guess there's a 500 to 1,000 infantry in there, but again, we don't know. And that's because when on a battlefield in real life, it is very difficult to count troops. Look at that, we've identified that these are all enemy. Still no extra information popping up. Let's see if we get anything else up as we get near. So we've now got some physical information. So we can see this guy it's armed with a Contos, square formation, and we can see it's got medium armour and a small shield. Well, we don't know who it is because we're not close enough yet. Also note, we've spotted that they've brought some allies with them. We don't know who the allies are yet, we just know they're blue coloured, but we have spotted that they've brought some mercenaries with them. So that's a bit dangerous for us. And on our square formation we're starting to see a little bit more information there, but not too much. Let's bring ourselves a bit closer. See the flag? So the flag's now come out. So we've now identified there's a command element in that cavalry unit which might alter our plans in terms of where we're going to attack, and it's the same for this infantry unit here. There's a command element in there as well. Now we're only seeing generic names. Now I thought long and hard about that as well, because I thought, should you be able to identify the units that you're fighting? And based on what I've read, I don't think most units knew who they're fighting. I mean, obviously, like, take Alexander the Great, he knew he was fighting the Persians, and maybe some of the more famous units, like the Immortals, might be identifiable, but on the whole, it's just cavalry. And like I say, this system defaults to giving you the nationality, in this case green, and the type. But yeah, we can always tweak that later on. So yeah, and if you look down here at our own units, you can see no information on them at all. We just know they're there and that's it. And as for our chap down here, we don't know whose side he's on, although obviously if you're playing the game and you're paying attention, you should know he's one of ours, because when you were nearer, you saw he was one of ours. So I think that's all I want to cover for the moment. But I think it's vitally important for command and control, and to give you the sense of being on a battlefield, that we limit information in this way, because a lot of decisions that commanders make, they're imperfect because they have imperfect information. They don't know what they're facing. And with this new system, sometimes you won't even know what allegiance something is until you send someone over to take a look. And nor will you know the state of your own troops unless you send a messenger over to get an update or move your unit physically over there. And it does take into account kind of control structures. Generally speaking, you know your own units better than units in other kind of control structures, and you know your side better than units in the opposing side. So you find that the estimates get sort of more and more far out as you, I guess, move away from the command. And of course this all works with Kronos, so if you sort of rewind things back, you can see how the information changes as we get nearer and further away. So yeah, all fully integrated. So that's it. I say it's a little bit of work, because Ancient Armies up to this point had always been coded to just display the works, everything. And in my mind, being a person on the battlefield, there's no way you could know that level of detail, especially with regards to your numbers of men. I personally think that once you're in combat, you'll be able to tell how you're doing, not by your losses, but by how your formations are holding up in terms of cohesion and fatigue, which I think is far more realistic. Anyway, that's it for this demonstration. I hope you've found it useful, and thank you for taking the time to watch. Goodbye.